right, so I'll call this meeting to order here. And we need somebody to be nominated to be chair of the Finance Committee. So I'll ask.
I'd like to nominate Joel.
I'll second.
All right. Are there any other nominations? Joel, are you good with the nomination?
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a vote then.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor of Joel being the chair of the Finance Committee? It's
Awesome.
it's 2 to whatever, so it's a done deal. Joel, congratulations. The meeting's yours to run now.
Suppose I should pull up the agenda.
Good
So
call.
right now we have citizens' comments, and there are no citizens in the room, so we'll skip past that.
Not prepared for this to start.
And Joel, you know this meeting's live streamed.
I'm struggling to hear you guys sometimes. Sometimes it comes through fine, but other times not.
Okay. Well, so with Joel, the meeting is being live streamed, so just be aware of that.
Sure.
Can you hear me okay on that one?
Yep, I can hear you usually pretty well, Tom.
All right.
Roger.
So the next thing we'll do is, I guess we're looking for approval of the minutes from April 18th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from April 18th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
discussion? Aye.
Aye. It's like our first meeting ever.
Yep, so I'll take it. Joel, if it's okay with you, I'll just kind of dictate the agenda here. You guys interrupt me if there's something you want to ask questions about or talk about. Are you okay with that, Joel?
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
All right, cool. So next thing then that we have is the director's report. So there's 3 elements that I have here, and I produce these here now throughout the rest of the fiscal year as we get closer to the finish line here. So just a few things I want to note for the current budget that we have right now. So there's 3 exhibits, and I have one on the screen right now. This is just a fund-by-fund summary of all of our expenses. So in the we have the budget column, how much we intend to spend. That's what we adopted at the school board level in October. Here's what we've expended or encumbered, and then we have how much of the budget is remaining. So we would expect for the most part to have a positive amount. There's a couple instances where we're a little bit over budget, but there's always an explanation for that, and I can answer questions if you have that. But the biggest ones we have, 75% of the budget is salaries and benefits. So I've highlighted those in yellow. And we are 23 payrolls into the school year. So we have 3 more payrolls left. So we're perfectly on, we're actually under, and I'll show that here in just a little bit, but we're about $400,000 under budget in Fund 10. We're doing fine in the other areas. There's no concerns that I'm going to share. Fund 21 is our donations fund. We guessed we were going to have $115,000 in expenditures, but that was based on a guess of having $115,000 in donations. So as the expenses are up, it means the donations are up. So we're fine in Fund 21. Fund 27, again, the 2 biggest funds are 10 and 27. Those are the funds where we pay for kids to learn and pay all the bills. So we are under budget about 4% in salaries and benefits in Fund 27, which is a total of about $400,000. So we're under budget with our salaries and our benefits in Fund 27. Fund 39, we have our long-term debt. So we have 1 more payment to make here in the spring, but that is for $2.8 million. So that amount that we haven't spent yet will be fully expended and will perfectly land on 100% right there. Fund 41, we have $411,000 left for future building projects. Okay. Fund 46, we have $59,000. That's for the Eagleville Pavilion that we're still working on. So we hope to have that all done by June 30th. Fund 50 is our food service. We talked with Pam Harris here. Altogether, we're $207,000 under budget altogether, so we're doing fine in that regard. You can see here that there's a negative $309,000, so it looks like we're over budget. That's simply just a coating piece there where we had a large rooftop condenser installed at Mukwonago High School, and we should have quoted that here under equipment, but we quoted it under purchase services, but altogether, we're fine in food service and we're fine in the other funds. So I just want to quickly go through that. If you have questions, at the end of the day, when you look at the subtotal here, like in Fund 73, we have $179,000 left within our budget that we have not expended yet. But when this whole thing shakes out, we'll be in great shape with all of our funds. So that's a fund-by-fund snapshot. All right. If you guys have any questions at any point, please let me know. The next thing that I want to highlight then is specifically talk about salaries and benefits, because that's such a big piece of the budget here. So on the screen now, I have Fund 10 salaries here, and you can see after 23 payrolls have been completed, we go back historically and we take a look at that, and then we can compare that to how those prior years ended. So I can typically use this information right here to figure out how we are doing in terms of our overall budget, and we're doing a great job here with our salaries. As I said earlier, we'll be $400,000 under budget. So you can see in the last couple of years, we used up 98.2 or 98.6 or 97.3% of the budget. So it's nice that we're very close, but when we come under budget like that, you're talking, several $100,000 under budget there. So that's Fund 10 salaries. Here's Fund 10 benefits, same thing. So we currently at 77.7% of the budget, which is somewhat similar to many of the years here, going back 7 or 8 years past. And we typically always end under budget there, which is a good thing. Then for Fund 27 salaries, again, same thing. We're at 75.3% of the budget utilized. And you can see that we typically end under budget there. So we're on track there as well. And same thing for Fund 27 benefits. So we're in good shape. I have no concerns. Here's a snapshot. Let me zoom out here just a little bit. This snapshot shows you our cash position that we have in the bank for Fund 10. Now we have money in our other funds, but when the school board is interested in how much money do we have, if you were to ask me that question, that's unreserved, non-restricted. That's what we're looking at here. So you can see that, in July, August, September, October, here in November is where our low water mark hits, and then we get to December and then January, and this is when our property tax revenues, everybody pays their tax bills, and that money is forwarded onto our bank accounts there. So we kind of get to a high water mark there in January or February, and we kind of move on here. But the point that I'm making here is that in this past November, we had $4.5 million. If the board were to ask me how much money do we have for, you name whatever project that might come to mind, if we have to make a building fix or a building addition, that would be my answer. You have about $4 million. If we were to spend more than that, then we would have to short-term borrow for cash flow purposes when we hit that low water mark in November. But that's where things stand right now. Okay? All right, so that's the last thing that I wanted to state then, just in the director's report here, is that based on the fact that I believe we will be $400,000 under budget in Fund 10 and another $400,000 under budget in Fund 27, as this budget wraps up, you'll likely have the option to do one of the following with the surplus funds. So I gave 4 options for the board to consider, and we can make this decision either in June or July. We could transfer, Fund 73 is our post-employment trust fund. We set money aside to pay for teacher retirement benefits. It's a part of our compensation package. We pay about $600,000 a year to keep ourselves fully funded. We could take our surplus money this year and make a prepayment, okay, and kind of pre-fund that. So we could put $200,000 or $300,000 from this year's budget into that account this year. We could take money and take the surplus and transfer it to Fund 46 for future building projects. So we start to use that fund a little bit more. So we could be, that's an option. We could be a little more aggressive in how much we allocate there. We could do year-end stipends for staff, or we could just leave the unused funds in Fund 10 as unrestricted fund balance. So those are just some options there. It's a good problem. I wouldn't even call it a problem. It's a good place to be. Well, we're about to cover that on the agenda tonight here, Craig. This will be our first time going into the prepayment of debt. Craig, are you asking me that about long-term, I'm sorry, with referendum debt? Yep. So this will be the first time that we're prepaying it here. Okay? Do you guys have any questions about any of that stuff there? I'm just trying to give you a high-level overview of the budget, where we are right now, how I think this thing's going to land come, June 30 comes and goes, and by the middle of August, our book should be closed at that point, so it takes about 30 or 45 days to close them all down, and then we'll know where things stand. But right now, I'm making a pretty good guesstimation, and as of right now, and I feel confident that we'll be very close in that ballpark. So the budget's come along great. We'll have some options.
You said we're usually over. I think you said that in the last meeting. What do we usually do with the money when we are over? Is there a trend, or is it usually we're prepaying stuff, or?
So in years past, Carolyn, we have taken, if there was some surplus in the budget, we've taken that surplus and we've transferred it to Fund 46. That's how Fund 46 is funded solely. It's, do you have money at the end of the year? And if so, you can take that money and put it into Fund 46, and then that money is basically restricted. Only can be used for future building projects. So I think we have about $3.2 million in there right now. And I know we made 2 transfers at the end of, within the last 3 or 4 years, we made 2 transfers which funded that money. So, our books are closing on June 30th, but the DPI gives us 30 extra days throughout the month of July to say, hey, as the dust settles, you need a little time for that. You can take the month of July to make another transfer. So we've done that in the past. We have done staff stipends a couple times as of recent. So those are 2 areas where when we've been under budget, that's how we've gone about it. Did I answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else? I'll just go ahead and say this because I'm going to talk about the 2022-23 budget for next year shortly, coming up in the agenda. And the last time I communicated to you, I said that the budget was we had a deficit of $750,000. We've settled our health insurance decision. We saved money on what we thought we were going to spend, so we dropped that deficit down by about $300,000. And through some other parts that are no longer moving, that's down to about $160,000 of a deficit. So we dropped it significantly. If that's how it ends, then what I would say is, of whatever surplus we have this year, take $160,000 of it, put that money into Fund 73, be aggressive and pre-fund that, so that way you can lessen next year's expense and basically build yourself a balanced budget. So that'll be my recommendation. So more to come there, okay? So if you guys don't have any more questions on that, Joel, are you good on that?
Yep. Does that make, on your assumption there, is what's that assumed for the salary increase for?
The 4.7% CPI, 4.7.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Any other questions?
After we would transfer that 160,000, what's that leave us with then?
For how much money would we have left in this year's budget, like
Yeah.
surplus? I call about 540,000.
Uh,
So there's some room there. I want to say in years past, we've done stipends in the range of $250 or $500, and I want to say that cost about $200,000, give or take.
Would those be paid to, would it be paid like this year's staff, or would it be paid for starting in August for?
We've done that. You can pay it now. You can wait till August. We have given stipends out and given it to those who are returning next year. So some staff members resign. Sorry, you gotta stay with us to get that. So it's for returning staff members. We obviously prorate it. So if you're a half-time or part-time teacher, then you get your prorated share.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we've done 500 for teachers and 250 for support staff. We've done a couple different ways over the last 5 or 6 years. So I can bring back some ideas for you, or have the personnel committee bring that to their committee, but the options are there. I believe the options will be there. I can't see it not happening.
Can we do it like tax-free to the teachers where we purchase a crap ton of Amazon gift cards? I'm just looking out for the staff.
No, no. So we've done that. So we actually upped the amount. So if it was, $500, we paid $550. So when FICA and the WRS contribution that they have to make are taken out, it lands on $500. So we have done that
That's what I was looking at.
without skirting the IRS completely.
Oh, there's points involved too.
Yeah, no,
Line.
good questions.
You know.
Good questions.
Can we put it on my credit card?
All right, anything else there? All right, if not, then we'll move on to debt defeasance. So defeasance is, I don't know where that word came from, but it's what's used in the industry, and that's just prepayment of debt. So this is the first time that we're gonna look at prepaying debt. Tonight I'm recommending that we we prepay $5 million of debt. So we have built up a balance in Fund 39 through our tax levy each year, and now we're in a position where we have this money and we can go ahead and prepay debt. So that's my recommendation right now. There's a couple reasons why, and Craig, if you remember, and Erica, if you remember, we talked about this initially in January when we were at Clarendon. So now we're getting down to it here. So we're going to try to take action here next week, Monday, and make it official. With the $5 million, and I'm going to bring up a couple things here. With the $5 million that we have, I have the debt schedule on the screen, and I know there's a lot of moving numbers here, a lot of fine details here, but if we prepay $5 million, there's a lot of good things that happen. I can't think of one bad thing, to be honest with you. We would shorten our timeline down from 2035 to 2034. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger here, and you can see here now on this in this box that's out here, you can see there's a $3.215 million amount, and then right above that there's $3.145 million. This is what it looks like after we pay that off. So you can see that this debt payment is gone. So we got rid of that 2035 year. And most of the 2034 year is also gone through this $5 million prepayment. This column here represents how much we save in interest, okay? And altogether, this is gonna save $1.4 million in future costs by prepaying this debt early, okay? The second thing that makes a lot of sense here is that we will increase our position in the aid formula for next year. So that takes a little bit of guesswork by me, but I feel pretty confident about it at this point that we would, because of where we will land in the school funding formula, by paying off $5 million early, we will increase state aid by $1.1 million. So anytime you can get aid to go up, it makes taxes go down. Why wouldn't you do this? It makes sense, okay? So between shortening the timeline down to 2034, reducing $1.4 million in future interest costs, and increasing next year's aid by $1.1 million, almost $1.2 million, this gets my full recommendation. So my guess is that we'll be doing the same thing next year as well. Okay, so we'll shorten this thing, we'll prepay another $5, maybe $6 million next year, and we'll get rid of the 2034 and the 2033 year, and we'll keep really attacking the first year ahead of us, so we'll attack the 2022 year, and also like a couple of years on the back end there. So we're gonna shorten this thing down and get out of debt more quickly. No.
The short answer.
No.
I feel like we should have been and have voted on it.
So let me say it like this: we have refinanced our debt 2 Septembers ago, and that saved $1 million in future costs as well. We have over levied. Okay, so we've over levied. Now it's one thing we collect the money on the front end of the school year. Now on the back end, here we are. Let's take that money that we collected and put it to work and pay this debt off. So this is the first time I can only do this through board action. And
So we collected the money, but it's been sitting there? Is that what you're saying?
yes,
So we
Oh, that's how we got.
so we talked
side, but we haven't officially done it.
Hey, is that two over levies or is that one? That got to the side.
I want to say 2.
We have talked about it. We have
Yes. Yep. So yeah, this game plan, obviously, this game plan outlives board terms in some instances. So for some of you, it's brand new information. For some of you, you feel like you've heard it more than once. But this is a larger game plan that, you know, I stand by. I think it's good for, it's financially good for the district, for our taxpayers, for everyone. We keep it as best we can here. So the long-term strategy that we have in play here too with our tax levy is that we will be able to pay off debt early and continuously drop the overall tax levy, the amount that we are asking for. So long as we do that, individual property taxes that show up, you know, in late December should be getting smaller and smaller. Maybe not significantly. There should be no jumps at all. That's our strategy going forward for the foreseeable future.
This is just because I don't understand the structure of the loan, but how come the things aren't changing before and after? So if we pay down $5 million, shouldn't that change all the numbers so that our actual loan is?
Yeah, I'm gonna walk up here. So, we're good. So, Vito, so like we have so here's our principal. We have $33.925 million in principal.
Yes.
And then we pay off $5 million here, and we drop that down to 28.9. Yep. So then we have the total interest that we pay over the life of the repayment here is $5.3 million. We drop that down to $3.9 million. That difference there between 5.3 and 3.9 is about $1.4 million, and we are shaving that much. We are avoiding those in interest costs.
Changes. All right.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, and again, why does it accelerate in 2025? That's the next thing. And then what happens? Are we able to pay at that rate, or are we only able to do it for a couple of years?
So it accelerates in 2025 because of existing debt. When we borrowed $49.5 million, we did it in 2 loans. We did $39.5 million and $10 million. And if you do $10 million or less, banks can get more competitive on how they bid on it. So there's an advantage to get $10 million as cheap as you can with the lowest interest rates possible, and then the remainder goes out to the market. And I don't know enough about the bond law to really comment on that, but there's a reason why we didn't do it that way, most definitely. But there is so we are paying off just a little bit of principal these 3 years, and then it jumps to 2.7. This issuance of debt here is the 36.6 million. So when we refinance that 39.5 million, when we refinanced it, it became this number. The biggest thing that we have here is that we're paying the minimum that we have to pay is $3.2 million a year. So not only do we levy $3.2 million, we'll levy a little bit extra, and that way we can pay off the current year and maybe 1 or 2 future years as well. So it does kind of take that jump there, but because in concert there's another issuance of debt that you're not seeing on the screen right here, that when you add it all up, it's going to be $3.2 million a year, give or take. So at a minimum, that's what we have to levy for Fund 39 to stay current with our debt. But with our situation and our property wealth, we're able to levy for more and pay off debt more quickly. So, sure, hold on a second. Let me do it like this. I'm going to pull up another exhibit here. This is the exhibit I shared back in December, or January rather, here. So this is our total debt schedule here, okay? There's a couple years on the end that I can't fit in the screen, but I'll leave it at that. So if you have basically you have a couple loans going at the same time, and you add them both up, you have how much you owe in principal, interest, your total payment, how much is going to come out of the annual budget, and what that annual tax levy needs to be. So this at a minimum is what we have to levy. But we are able to over levy beyond that amount and use that over levy to prepay debt. And we can do this strategy for a few more years, where instead of maybe levying 3.2 million, we're actually levying 6.4. So we can pay the current year and maybe 1 year on the back end and we keep doing that until it's all gone. Does that make sense?
Explain that land value.
Sure. So yeah, our property values right now, district-wide, are $4.1 billion. That's up significantly. So the more, there's two types of growth. There's growth on the existing home. So, you know, inflation goes up and says, hey, your house is worth this, you know, and right now it's a good time to sell your house if you can swing it. But then there's also when there's new development. So anytime there's new neighborhoods, new houses, new businesses, whatever it might be, those, when those types of wealth creations, not just paper gains, but when houses that are built or businesses that are built come to the district, that's more people who can help pay that property tax amount. So it's more hands on deck. It can lighten everybody's burden. You know, Wolf Run is where Walmart is, Home Depot, all that stuff there. So that's in a tax incremental district, and how that kind of works is the village built it. The village, there's through agreements and through votes of the village board, they will take the property taxes that the Home Depot pays, and they'll keep that, and they don't share it with the school district or the Waukesha County Technical College or anybody else. And they're using that to repay themselves for the cost of running the sewer, the electricity, building the road itself, all that stuff. Once that tax incremental district is fully paid off and the village, you know, pays themselves back, then the Home Depot's property tax that they pay will be, you know, to benefit of us. So
When's that?
I gotta take a look at that. It's gotta be getting, the most you can do is 20 years, and that's gotta be getting close now. Isn't it?
So we have that, we can come back with that next month.
Yeah.
I've been here for 17 years, and they have just moved
Yeah.
to Walmart over there, so if that happened before
It's
that.
gotta be close then. So there's, I think there's three tax incremental districts that are in the village of Mukwonago right now. There is, that's number 3. Number 4, I wanna say is the business park, down on 83 on the very south end of the village, with Banker Wire and all those other things. So right now those, yeah, number 5 are the new apartments that are built down by the lake that used to be on that auto dealership. So when those are done, that'll be more property wealth that's joining the district that'll pay for taxes. But I guess to circle back here to this conversation, are there other questions I can answer right now about prepaying debt? I can't think of one bad reason not to. This is just a full recommendation from me, but it's up to you.
To answer your question, it's $3 million.
All right, cool. So without further ado, do you guys want to take a vote on this? Does anybody want to make a recommendation to the full board to prepay $5 million of debt?
I'll make that.
I'll make a motion to push this forward.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, next thing that we have then is a bus route reduction. So there's a couple of route reductions I think that we can take. So I'm going to share a graph here on the screen here. Give me 1 second. We have 33 double run bus routes. They'll go out and they'll pick up middle school, high school kids first, and then they'll go pick up elementary kids second. So here we took head counts. We had our bus drivers count the number of kids on each bus here in the morning and the afternoon. And so you can see there's some, it varies quite a bit here, but you can see that number 17 and 18 are St. John's and Eagleville. And the ridership for those is just extremely light. So if I give you the pure head counts here real quick, I'll show you that at St. John's. So we counted once in January and then again at the end of April. So here is St. John's number 17. The smallest amount of kids on the bus was 3 and the most was 9. For Eagleville, it was between 4 and 6. So there is the approximate cost. So, you have your first bus route that goes out for middle school, high school, and then you have a second route that goes out. That second route costs $22,000. So there's not a lot of kids on these buses here. Now, one thing that is important to note here is that we're responsible here. So the Mukwonago terminal for Dousman Transport picks up Big Bend, Clarendon, Eagleville, Rolling Hills section, Parkview Middle School and the high school, and they also transport to St. John's in Mukwonago, Christ Lutheran in Big Bend, and St. Joe's Catholic School in Big Bend. We as a public school district pay for the transportation to the private schools. Okay, so not a lot of people know that, and that's why I'm sharing it right now. So we have a legal obligation to transport the students that attend private schools. Now, I gave a link here that I'm going to pull up here real quickly. When you offer transportation, it doesn't have to just be a yellow school bus. It can be a couple of different things. It can be a private taxi service or a private transportation service, or you can do parent contracts. So a parent contract, so there's two types that they have here. There's a contract for public or private school students, but in our case, we're looking at private school pupils only. So we have this bus that costs $22,000 for about 9 kids. The average cost per kid is over $2,000 per rider. When the average cost for that bus for those kids exceeds 150% of our average, and our average cost is about $500 a kid for a year for transportation. So they're like 4 times greater than what our cost is. So while we have an obligation, they can't, a private school, and we want to obviously be great partners with them. We like St. Joe's, don't we, Craig? Alumni class of 65. So with that being said, we want to work with them, but if they say, hey, we want a bus to transport these 4 kids, we're like, well, that's a crazy investment that isn't really equitable for all kids in the district, public and private. So if the cost exceeds 150% of what it costs to transport a regular kid here that doesn't have a special circumstance of any sort, then we can offer the parent contract. So if we reduce the St. John's route and eliminate it, we think the Dousman Transport Terminal thinks that for all the kids that live in the section, because these St. John's kids, these 6 to 9 kids, there's more kids assigned to that route, but they just don't use it. They're getting dropped off by mom or dad or whatever. But for those kids who regularly ride, we would game plan to pick them up on our existing section elementary routes. Once they get to section, those kids will kind of get off the bus, get on one empty bus, and get down to St. John's to start their school day. So we think that we could collapse and consolidate that without kids losing access to a bus. But then there are some kids in that St. John's route that live in the North Prairie School District or in the Prairie View school boundaries. That school gets picked up by the North Prairie Terminal. So that creates a little bit of a challenge. I guess the point here is that I think the right thing to do is to save the money, because I think it's a lot of money to spend on just a small number of kiddos. But then we would probably have to offer parent contracts to a couple of families. So, that's going to be $400 or $500 for the parent contract. That's the average cost that we spend per kid. So, I would anticipate that's not going to be received warmly by everybody. When it disrupts your family, that screws up your morning routine and all that stuff. So there's going to be some pushback. But I do think it's the right thing to do to be fiscally responsible. As for the Eagleville route, so the school board, they have a charter arrangement. They don't necessarily have an attendance boundary at Eagleville, so it's a charter school. Kids from anywhere can live there. The school board agreed to create 2 routes for them. Okay, so you can give them as many routes as you want, or you can give them 1 route. I think now that you've given 2 routes and one is very, very lightly used, I think that the responsible thing to do is to cut that route too. If there's more people on it, then we keep it, but I don't see it, so. No. Wherever they live, I mean, their home school could be Rolling Hills or Section or Prairie View. Like, they have a public school option that they can get a bus ride to. But if you choose Eagleville, you might have to find a way to get to the existing bus route or to the pod stops that are created to cut the two routes. But yeah, those Eagleville kids would not necessarily get a parent contract. Yeah, I think it makes sense here for the committee to make this recommendation to the full school board.
All right, I make a motion to push this to the full school board, that we, that's it, we'll talk about the St. John's and Eagleville
Sure,
route.
reduce the two routes,
Yeah.
17 and 18. Okay.
I second.
Do you want to roll call that there, or take a vote there, Joel? I
Sure, any discussion?
think we're
All in
good.
favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. The next thing that I have then is bus rates. So we have to establish a rate with Dousman Transport for the upcoming 22-23 school year. So last week, Larry Kirkley from Dousman Transport came in here and he talked to us and gave us the reasons of what, kind of how his industry is coming along and whatnot. So they are seeking a 3% raise. I am going to recommend here that the school board, or that the committee rather, give at least a 2.65% raise. So we gave them a 2% raise on March 1st, and that allowed for them to give every driver a $1 an hour raise, which I thought was a good move. The drivers aren't making they're not making a killing on their job. It's a tough job, and I respect that job. So I thought that was the right move, was to give them a raise and get ourselves more competitive with other bus companies in the area. So with the 2% raise that we gave them on March 1st, and if we were to give them a 2.65% raise, that compounding effect would be a 4.7% raise in total. So I picked 4.7 because that's CPI. That seems to be inflation here. So I want to be smart about guarding our district's assets, our financial responsibility to be prudent, but at that same time, I also want to make sure that the bus company has what they need to function. I know they lost a mechanic here who got a better offer, so I'm aware of people who, it's hard for them to keep their people, like anywhere. So I want to respect that. So I would recommend that we give at least a 2.65% raise. Yeah, I just want to add one more thing here, Craig. So if we provide the full 3%, so they were originally asking for a 4% raise, but Larry came back and said he listened to the presentations and said, hey, 4%, I almost feel bad asking for that, so I'm dropping it to 3. Well, if we were at 3%, it'd be an additional $8,000. So if you did a 2.65% raise and you were okay with that, for additional $8,000, it would be the 3% that they're asking for. That's your call. I would be comfortable with both. The budget can handle this for next year as I see it. So what questions do you have? We ultimately need to make a recommendation to the school board for a rate increase.
Joe, you got anything?
Nope. I propose that we take the 2.65 to the full board.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Let me just
All
ask
in
this here.
favor?
Do you guys want to, if I may here, sorry to interrupt there, Joel, do you
Yeah, go
want,
ahead.
do you want, I guess I was recommending that we do at least a 2.65% raise. If you wanted to do 3%, again, in the scheme of a $57 or $58 million budget, you know, how far does that extra $8,000 go for the bus company? That's your decision, though. At the end of the day, I would be comfortable if you chose 2.65 or 3%. So, totally up to you guys. So
I'm gonna go ahead and say yeah.
yeah, there we go.
I think that they've come when they needed it, and I'm thinking they will come again next year, because I don't foresee prices going up, so I think that we can now, when we had it, give them later if we're requested.
We do.
So the gas prices went up or are up anyway.
Okay. Okay. So I think, Joel, you had made a motion for 2.65, and Vito seconded that?
Carolyn had something.
Oh,
I just think we have the money and without bus drivers and mechanics and the company running, our kids aren't getting to school. So I think with the $8,000 being what it is, we keep that company happy and the bus drivers happy, and they're not getting raises denied
mm-hmm.
because the finger's gonna point right back to us. Not that it's our entire responsibility, but I think he already dropped it down to 3% for us. I think going at 3 is good, or 2.85, but meeting them somewhere in the middle would be fair.
I think we should just do the 3%. I'll say that. I think they're worth it. I think they need it. I'm not trying to just give away $8,000, but I think is who we're giving it to, going towards a very needed thing, and I say, yeah, it is at a needed time.
Right.
So that's how I see it.
I guess my other 2 cents on it is we're giving the teachers 4.7%, right?
Well, we haven't decided that yet. I mean, they have the right to negotiate up to that amount, but that hasn't been settled yet. But that's more or less the target for every school district at this time.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was thinking that it just makes sense, right? But
You gotta keep in mind that we're talking about the difference from people that make between 45 and 70 or 80,000 and people that make 17 and $18 an hour. So if we were to go above what we're doing for the teachers, it's not the same. Giving them a little bit more, giving them an extra 50 cents is a lot different than giving them an extra $1,000 or whatever the hell, whatever it turns out to be. So, Joe, your motion was for 2.65. Do you want to stick with that, or do you want to go up to 3? I would be good either way, I think.
well, it sounds like I'm okay with 3. We'll go with that. I'll make a motion to send the 3% increase to Dousman to the full board.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, so then I'm going to give a quick update on the 22-23 budget here. Just give me a second here. I need to open up a document. As I said earlier, we improved ourselves and where we're at. All right, here we go. All right, give me a second here, guys. I'm sorry, I got a paper handout that I'll go with here. I'll pass this out here for everyone to see.
I'll hold yours, Joel.
Here, I got, can you, I don't have everyone. Here, I'll let you guys share on that. You guys share on that. All right, so Joel, I'll just kind of talk about this out loud so you can kind of hear what I'm saying here. So I have a budget, a forecast here for the upcoming year and then for following years. So the budget year is 22-23, and there's 3 scenarios that we have there. So there's, the 3 boxes that you're taking a look at there. The top box represents what happens if we get a $0 per pupil increase in each year. So if you see that first row of yellow, it says 0, 0, 0, 0. That means we're getting $0 of an increase of the following 4 years. The middle scenario is if we get $100 per pupil each year, and then the bottom box is if we get $200 per pupil. So I get there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of numbers in there, but the biggest one that you want to take a look at then, so if you look at the budget year coming up, 22-23, we're basically sitting on a $160,000 deficit. I'm good with that in all 3 scenarios. Nothing changes for 22-23 because we know how much money we're going to get next year. It's not really a question. The only thing that could affect that is how many kids showed up and affect our third Friday counts. But if you take a look at the next 4 budget years, the 23-24 year and the 3 following, if you take a look at that surplus or deficit row, and I have those highlighted in blue, you'll see that we have some, next year, if we get a $0 increase, we go to $1 million deficit, and then it goes to 1.8 million, and then 2.5 million, and it kind of runs away. Now those are deficits. I don't want to create alarm on that, because that's really, you have a problem and you're not doing anything to address it. So clearly, if we got to that point, we would address it. But what I'm trying to highlight here is that a $0 increase in school funding, per pupil funding, puts us in a bad spot for the next couple biennial budgets. So the next scenario is what happens if we got $100 per pupil, and you can see that we cut that deficit down by about half. And then the bottom scenario where we get $200 in funding per pupil, the deficits basically go away, and we're in a much, much better spot. So the point I'm simply trying to make here with this is that it goes back to, we got to advocate for ourselves here with our legislators and do something about K-12 school funding. Okay, if we continue to get $0 increases, we'll be in trouble. Next year will be okay. I have no concerns about next year at this point, where things are coming along fine. The attention kind of goes to the following year. Yeah, we're planning for one budget year and already looking 1 year past that. So as discussions occur for the 23-25 biennial budget, we need to be pretty active. All right, so that's my only message here at this point. Do you guys have any questions that I can answer about any of that?
Are you gonna run the show as far as letting us know when we need to start the discussions? You are? Okay. That's all.
Okay. Any other questions about the budget there? All right, and if not, then the last thing I want to ask the committee about here is just our practices. I want to make sure that you're comfortable if we move forward with using a collections agency to help us recover unpaid accounts. So we have a number of student fees. There's a beginning of the year registration fee. There's fees to play for sports. There's fees for, we'll pay for AP exams, on the front end, because we order them in bulk, and then we need to be reimbursed in the back end. Just give me a second here. I need to navigate. Bear with me just a second here, everyone. Okay. So here you can see this is all of our fees. We haven't approved these fees yet. We're still working on looking into the activities fees, so maybe we can align those like our sports fees are, where we go to a one-time fee of $150, and there's no more. You can play as many sports as you want. But you can see all the various fees that we have here: registration fees, athletic fees, lunch fees. Those will be coming back next year. We have miscellaneous fees for high school students. There's a parking fee for $180 for the year. We have our technology partnership program, where the families pay $50 a year for access to a Chromebook, and at the end of those 4 years, that Chromebook then belongs to them. So there's a number of different fees. There can be damage to that Chromebook and other things that we charge for. Then we just have some music, instrument rental fees, uniform fees, etc. So we have a number. I've written this manual here. I'm just going to scroll up to the front here. So we have this manual that we're going to, and I'll take your feedback here. On July 1st, I'm going to communicate this out to our internal staff so we can be completely aligned with how we treat fees, okay? So for example, parking fees need to be paid up front. You can't get that on credit. If you don't pay, you can't drive, okay? So there's certain things that we will be flexible on and won't be flexible on. We send out fee statements to our families. So here under fee communications, we send out 4 statements a year right now. The school buildings will send one out in October or November, and then again in February or March, and one more time in April. After the schools communicate 3 times and say, here's your outstanding fees, then in May, I take over from there, then I send out statements, okay? We do have a process here for people to have their fees waived. We spell out how that works, okay? This is in board policy, so you guys have approved on how fees can get waived. We're willing to set up a payment plan, so if somebody says, look, I can't pay this all right now, I just say, fill this out, make an official request, and then we take the amount you owe, we divide it by the number of months left in the school year, and we just ask that you make that payment each month going forward. So we try to work with people as best we can. That'll be our game plan going forward. But then there's gonna come a point where certain folks won't pay or don't attempt to pay. So in board policy, it states that you authorize me currently to take additional action. I just want to make sure that we're okay that if that additional action is that we work with, say, Waukesha County Collections, and we turn it over, I would propose that we do this for 6th graders moving out of the elementary up to the middle school. So anytime a kid's moving a building, so if 6th graders going to 7th, 8th goes to 9th, and 12th graders graduate, we'll work with you for a number of years to get paid, and we hope that, you know, we can be good partners, but there comes a point where you got a lot of stuff that you haven't paid for, and you're not willing to do it, then we got to find a different way to go about it. So I'm asking for your input here if we're comfortable using a collections agency. Many other districts do this, and I would dare say most do it. It hasn't been our practice, but I think that we should consider this. Craig, go for it.
It's like you give the families a lot of opportunities at least to talk to someone and say, here's our situation, death in the family, a horrible divorce, or whatever it is.
Yep.
If you give no response after 9 letters and 9 emails, then it looks like they just don't want to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't care.
Sean, yeah, I don't know.
So we have been extremely reluctant to not allow a student to participate in graduation ceremony when it's not really their fault that their parents aren't paying the fees. So at one time, you can legally prevent them from participating in the graduation ceremony. You can hold their diploma. What you cannot do is you cannot hold their transcripts. So their transcripts have to be shared with universities, for example. So it doesn't matter, no. But again, we've done a variety of things. In my 27 years in administration.
At least say, hey, Sean or Tom, horrible tragedy.
Yes, absolutely.
Make a payment of $25 and start the process.
We have a number of families that do just that.
Right.
And we work with them, and we're talking about a small percentage of our families, some that owe a lot of money, like Tom said, that who have not, for whatever reason, who have not cooperated. But we have been reluctant to punish the students in those scenarios. And so at one time, yes, we didn't allow them to participate in activities or field trips, and that's just ugly. That's just ugly.
Collection agency would talk to the parents, not the kids, which is what we want.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So we like to give you an idea of how much we're talking. As of right now in the current school year, you know, there's a lot of spring sports where, you know, track and, you know, soccer, some other things here. $100 fee is assigned, you know, here in the spring. So even with some fees that originated back in August or September and fees that originated maybe a month or so ago, there's $86,000 currently of unpaid accounts for the current school year. So I'll send out a statement here in the next week or so that's saying, hey, kind of last call, you know, we need to see payment, or I need to hear from you one way or another.
Not the most compassionate guy.
I'll add, yeah. The least uncompassionate guy's gonna chime in now. Yeah, we haven't met Steve yet. I mean, if you look at what our job to do here is to teach kids, and I mean, what are we teaching the kids? And, what are we teaching the kids by not holding their parents accountable for their actions? We're teaching our kids that you don't need to be held accountable for your actions. It's their parent, sucks that they have to be the person to pay for it, but that's what we teach them. That when we tell them, nope, where you get to do everything even though your parents aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, we're teaching them something. Is it good or bad? I would argue. That's it. What is that? Well, collecting the money is one thing, but Sean had said that we stopped doing things like having them, letting them, we're letting them participate in or activities or doing graduation or doing sports and stuff like that. I think you teach a kid a very valuable lesson, an extremely valuable lesson when you tell him, no, I'm sorry, you can't play sports because your parents aren't paying your bills.
So I think at this point, I'm just really, we can have this discussion further for sure. At this point, I'm just looking to make sure that are we comfortable with unpaid bills? And again, I will reach out here over the next week for any family that has a 6th grader moving on, an 8th grader moving on, or a senior moving on. I'll give them a specific communication that says, as you move on to a next billing, we need to settle your current and past bills. And, you know, if this is intended to by the end of July, here's what we're going to do. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
I
So,
think everybody.
It comes from all sorts of things. It comes from, it comes from sports. It comes from student registration fees. It comes from damaged Chromebooks. We don't waive fees for so if you're a free and reduced student, you can get a free Chromebook. But if you drop that Chromebook, we don't waive that fee. That's still got to get fixed. And yeah, so they come from not just sports.
But do you know like where the biggest breakout is from?
Off the top of my head, I don't know it. But yeah, I can get access to that data.
I would guess it's unpaid student registration fees, but I don't know that for sure.
Yep.
So, two questions on this. I don't, yes, do it, but what is the success rate? I mean, are we gonna receive 100% of what's out there, or are we gonna get 80, or 85? What's the success rate? What's out there?
Well, yeah.
Second question is there's two things. If we don't have active credit applications, and we're gonna go after a mom and dad and not do something, are we putting it on a credit report? Are we doing this, or are we gonna go to that extreme and say, okay, and actually put keeping it?
So there's 2 companies that I'm aware of, or 2 agencies rather. There's Waukesha County Collections, and then there's a company called Transworld. And Transworld works with Mequon, Thiensville, Arrowhead, and Delavan. And then there's a number of Waukesha County school districts that use the Waukesha County Collections Agency. So I've reached out to both. I've gotten information from both, and I'm just going to see which one seems to work better for us. And then don't know how to answer that particular question. I got to learn a little bit more about Waukesha County Collections and how they compare against Transworld, and then I would just pick one of those to work with. And as long as the end result is the same for our district in terms of getting repayment, I take the one that has a better track record being more successful.
I would say the best question right now, because we got pretty much everybody here, including Art off in the cheap seats there, is anybody not okay with Tom doing it?
yes, so we can just move it to the full board, right? We make a motion?
No, he's just asking for
Yeah.
guidance.
Board decision and it's already policy.
Yeah, he's just asking for guidance.
Yeah, I'm just, if I don't hear anybody say, I'm uncomfortable with this, I'm going to move forward because the policy already said, it gives me that latitude. I'm just checking in to make sure, yeah, you guys okay with this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So that's a wrap then. Then we have committee member questions. Does anybody have questions?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 6:30. Woo!
On the dot.
Nailed it.